I'm Alex Griffin, 32, and I've never really fit in with my family. I've spent my whole life living in the shadow of my older sister, Vivian, who's always been the golden child, the heir to everything, both in our family and in our father's empire. While she waltzed her way through life, taking everything she wanted, I chose to join the military, to do something that felt real, something that would matter. The moment I left, it was as if I disappeared from their world altogether. I returned years later to a different family, a cold one, where my success in law couldn't even earn me a seat at the table. But tonight, everything changes. The family's long-kept secrets are about to surface, and Vivian's perfect life is about to shatter. I just don't know yet if I'll be the one to destroy it, or if she'll destroy me first. The ballroom was breathtaking. Gold and crystal, a vast sea of polished marble and soft white light that made everyone look like they belonged in a magazine spread. I felt like an intruder in a world that was so foreign to me, it might as well have been on another planet. My black tie suit fit well enough, but it felt like wearing a disguise. I didn't belong here. Not among the perfectly sculpted faces and high society conversations that circled around me like sharks. Vivian was the center of it all, as expected. She floated around the room, her smile as perfectly rehearsed as her words. She shook hands with the city's most influential people, laughing and chatting, always the picture of grace. And I stood in the corner, a shadow, watching as my sister, the flawless heiress, held court. "You made it," she had said to me earlier, her voice dripping with that full warmth that she'd perfected over the years. Her eyes, though, betrayed her. I was a disappointment to her, and we both knew it. But she smiled, like she always did, as if the mask could hide the resentment that had been building for years. I'd replied, trying to hold my ground, but the feeling of being small in this place never quite left. It never would. I sipped my drink, the glass cold against my fingers, and watched the scene unfold. Robert Prescott, her fiancé, hovered nearby. He was everything Vivian wanted in a man, wealthy, powerful, and polished to perfection. His stiff posture reminded me of a soldier, but it was the kind of soldier who stood in front of a parade, not the kind who saw war up close. I couldn't help but feel a pang of bitterness. My uniform had once been a source of pride, something that meant something, and here he was, playing the hero. The evening moved like a slow burn, everyone dancing around their lives, too consumed with their own illusions to notice what was happening beneath the surface. But I wasn't the only one who saw the cracks in the walls of this carefully constructed world. Vivian's performance was flawless, but I could see the fear lurking behind her perfect smile. Then, as if the universe had timed it perfectly, the moment I had feared arrived. A sudden ripple in the crowd, an uncomfortable shift of eyes, and my mother, her face pale and tight, made her way toward me. "Alex," she whispered, her voice quivering slightly. "You need to come with me. It's time." I knew immediately what that meant. The will reading was upon us. My father, the great Richard Griffin, who had always prided himself on his ironclad control over everything, had left us his legacy. And now, it was time for Vivian to inherit it all. As my mother's hand trembled on my arm, I followed her through the crowded ballroom. The whispers started as we passed. The murmur of the crowd was like static in my ears, but I couldn't help but hear the faint sound of Vivian's voice cutting through the noise. "She's a nobody compared to us," Vivian had said to Robert, loud enough for me to hear. "You shouldn't even bother acknowledging her." My heart tightened. Her words, sharp and cold, sliced through the atmosphere like a knife. I turned the corner and entered the private office where the family attorney, Mr. Abernathy, was waiting. The door shut behind us, and my mother's expression turned from nervous to something colder, something darker. "You don't understand, Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father always wanted what was best for you. But it's Vivian's time now. You'll see." I clenched my fists, but I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The betrayal was written in the air, thick enough to choke on. But as Mr. Abernathy began to read the will, a sinking feeling hit me. Vivian's eyes gleamed. She knew something I didn't, and in that moment, I understood this wasn't just about inheritance. It was about control. And I had been played. The words trust fund and pittance echoed in my ears as I sat there, stunned. My portion was small, too small to matter. And then came the final insult. Vivian was to take control of everything. The company. The estate. The life my father had built from the ground up. I had nothing. Not anymore. My father, in his last months, had signed everything away, leaving me with nothing but a label, a dollar amount that wasn't even enough to cover the damage. I looked at Vivian. Her smile was radiant, a mask of victory, and for a fleeting second, I saw the woman she truly was, a cold, calculated manipulator. I stood up, and the room seemed to tilt. My mother looked at me with a mixture of pity and resignation. Vivian's gaze locked with mine. Her eyes flickered with a mix of triumph and something darker, a warning. My body froze as I processed the magnitude of what had just happened. The world I had fought to build was slipping through my fingers, and I had no idea how to stop it. And then it hit me, the choice I had to make. I could accept this defeat, disappear into the shadows as I had always done, or I could fight. Now you see, I said, my voice low but cutting. Now you see what this family really is. Vivian's perfect smile faltered, and in that moment, I knew this was just the beginning. The sound of the door opening behind me made my heart stop. A familiar voice, low and threatening, reached my ears. I told you, Robert Prescott said, stepping into the room, his face taut with tension. You will regret this night. The cold weight of the night hung over me like a thick fog. The ballroom, once filled with laughter and clinking glasses, now seemed like a distant memory. The reality of what had just happened in that office was sinking in, like quicksand, slowly dragging me under. I had always known that my family was complicated, but I never imagined how far they would go to tear me apart. Vivian, the golden child, had everything, the inheritance, the company, the respect of everyone in that room. And me? I was nothing more than a ghost. You didn't think it was going to be easy, did you? My mother's voice echoed in my head. She'd said it with that same calm, dismissive tone she always used when she was trying to convince herself she was in control. But tonight, it was clear. Vivian was the one pulling the strings, and I was just a pawn in her game. I stepped out of the ballroom, the noise from behind me fading as the doors shut with a soft thud. My pulse was racing, a mix of anger and disbelief churning in my chest. I needed air. I needed to think. I grabbed my coat from the cloakroom and walked quickly toward the side exit, trying to avoid the eyes that seemed to follow me everywhere. But the quiet didn't last. A voice stopped me just before I reached the door. Alex. I froze, then slowly turned. It was Robert Prescott, Vivian's fiancé. His sharp suit, his crisp military posture, it was all designed to impress. He was the perfect match for her, a man who lived in the world of appearances and wealth. What do you want, Robert? I said, my voice colder than I intended. He steadied me for a moment, then his lips curled into a tight smile. I think you know what's happening here. Vivian's been very clear about her plans. And I'm just here to make sure you don't interfere. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the anger bubbling up. You really think you can control me? I took a step forward, but he didn't flinch. I don't need to control you, Robert replied, his tone suddenly softer, more threatening. Vivian does that well enough. But you don't belong here, Alex. You're a relic. An old soldier. You don't fit into this world. You never have. I gritted my teeth, my hands clenching into fists. Don't make the mistake of thinking I'm scared of you, Robert. He smirked again, then leaned in closer. You should be. The door behind me creaked open, and Robert straightened up, stepping back as if he hadn't just threatened me. I didn't know what game he was playing, but I could feel the tension in the air, the same tension I'd been living with my entire life. Vivian had always been the one who controlled everything, and now she had Robert on her side. But I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I couldn't. Be careful, Alex, Robert added as he turned to leave. You're not as important as you think you are. I watched him walk away, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. My thoughts raced. The words he'd said, they lingered. You're not as important as you think you are. I clenched my jaw. If Vivian thought she could wipe me out with a will, with her alliances, she was gravely mistaken. I would fight. I would make them see that I wasn't just a nobody. I walked out into the cold night air, the chill biting at my skin. I could feel the weight of the world bearing down on me, the night now thick with shadows. But somewhere deep inside, I knew this was just the beginning. Vivian's victory was short-lived. I would make sure of it. A car door slammed behind me, and before I could turn, I saw the headlights, blinding, closing in on me. I barely had time to react. The car sped past, screeching to a halt in front of me. A figure stepped out, blocking my path. Alex Griffin? The voice was low, almost a whisper. I think we need to talk. I looked up, and my heart sank. I recognized the man, Jasper Bellinger, a longtime business associate of Vivian's. He had always been a shadow in her world, one I never thought much of. But tonight, something in his eyes told me this wasn't a casual conversation. Jasper, I said, taking a step back. What is this? What do you want? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he just looked at me, his eyes scanning the area. He knew something was wrong. I could see it in the way he was watching the street, as if he was waiting for something, someone. Vivian, he said finally, his voice barely audible. She's not what you think. I was never part of her game. But you, Alex, you might be her biggest mistake. The words hit me like a slap in the face. Explain, I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. Jasper shook his head. It's too late for explanations. But if you want to survive this, you need to listen. Vivian has a plan. She's been playing both you and the rest of the family from the start. And you're next. My breath caught in my throat. I had always known Vivian was ruthless, but this was something else entirely. Before I could respond, Jasper turned abruptly, his figure melting into the shadows. I was left standing alone on the sidewalk, the weight of his words settling in. Vivian's plan? I muttered under my breath. What does that mean? I didn't know how much longer I could stay in this game of shadows, but one thing was clear, Vivian had no idea who she was dealing with. And I was done being her pawn. You're not as important as you think you are. The car door slammed behind me, echoing in the empty street. I had barely taken a step before the headlights flickered to life, illuminating the night. I turned, bracing myself for another confrontation. It was Jasper, his figure emerging from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Alex, he said quietly, his voice low and clipped. We need to talk. I felt a tightness in my chest, the kind that warned me something was wrong. This wasn't a casual conversation. Something had shifted in the air, and I couldn't place it. My instincts were on edge. What do you want? He took a step closer, his eyes scanning the surroundings, as if he was checking for something, or someone. It wasn't just me he was worried about. Someone else was watching, I could feel it. You've made a lot of enemies, Alex, Jasper muttered. And Vivian's not the worst of them. I didn't say anything, just waited for him to continue. I had to know how deep this went, how far Vivian had gone to bury me. Jasper looked over his shoulder again, his expression tense. It's not just about the inheritance. It never was. I narrowed my eyes. Then what is it about? The company. The family. His words hung heavy in the air. Vivian's been playing a dangerous game. And you're not the only one who's been caught in her web. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? He glanced down, as if trying to figure out how much to reveal. Vivian's more than just manipulative. She's connected to people, dangerous people. People who don't take kindly to threats. I took a step back, my pulse quickening. What does that have to do with me? Everything, he said, his voice hardening. She's been setting you up. And the worst part? You've been walking right into her trap. Every step you've taken has been calculated. She's been controlling the whole narrative, pulling your strings from the beginning. That's why she had you at the wedding. It wasn't just to rub your face in it. It was to keep you in check. I didn't know if I wanted to believe him or not. Jasper had always been close to Vivian, too close for comfort. But there was something in his eyes now, something raw, that made me listen. What are you talking about? What's her endgame? Jasper's eyes flicked to the shadows again. You're being watched. Right now. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I turned, scanning the street, but the place was empty, dark, the only sound the hum of distant traffic. My stomach twisted. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Who's watching me? I asked, my voice low, a mix of disbelief and growing panic. Jasper hesitated for a moment, then leaned in closer. It's not just Vivian. She's got someone in her pocket. Someone close to you. The cold wind cut through me, but it wasn't the temperature that made me shiver, it was the implication of his words. Who? He opened his mouth to speak, but the sound of an engine revving in the distance interrupted him. He froze, then cursed under his breath. Get in the car, he said quickly. Now. We don't have much time. I didn't hesitate. I knew something bigger was going down, and I wasn't about to let it pass me by. I jumped into the passenger seat as Jasper slammed the door behind him. The car roared to life, and we sped off, the city lights flashing by in a blur. The sudden speed only made my heart race faster. Tell me what's going on, I demanded, gripping the armrest as the car weaved through traffic. Jasper kept his eyes on the road. Vivian's made a deal with someone. Someone who's got leverage on you, Alex. She's been feeding them information. Your personal files, your financials. All of it. But that's not even the worst part. I turned to look at him, my heart pounding. What's the worst part? She's got access to everything. Your bank accounts. Your family's secrets. Your father's will, he trailed off, as if weighing how much to tell me. And she's using that against you. She's manipulating the whole damn system. The car skidded to a stop at a red light. I barely noticed it, too focused on his words. My father's will. The thing I thought I'd been battling for all this time. It wasn't just a legal document, it was a key to everything Vivian wanted. But she was hiding something, I could feel it. I don't trust you, I said. You've been with her. You've always been loyal to her. Why should I believe anything you say? Jasper's gaze flicked toward me for a brief second before he answered. Because I know you're running out of time, Alex. And because Vivian is about to make her biggest move yet. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. What's she going to do? Get you out of the picture, permanently, he said flatly. I felt a sudden jolt in my chest. What the hell do you mean, permanently? Before he could respond, the sound of screeching tires broke the tension in the air. I looked out the window to see a black SUV speeding toward us. I could see the dark silhouettes inside, their faces hidden, but I didn't need to guess who they were working for. Jasper's grip tightened on the wheel. Brace yourself. The SUV swerved toward us, and I knew then that everything was about to come crashing down. I reached for the door handle, my mind racing. There was no escape. In that moment, the world slowed down. The noise of the car, the chaos, all blurred into a single point of focus, Vivian's plan. It was no longer just about a will or family rivalry. It was about survival. And I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out alive. The first shot rang out. Then the car was in motion again, the engine roaring as we sped away into the night. But I wasn't running anymore. I was fighting back. She's got access to everything. And she's using it to destroy you. The night air cut through my skin as the car sped down the rain-slicked streets, Jasper's eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. He wasn't just looking for cars, though, he was looking for someone, or something. I could feel the tension building, thick and suffocating. Every turn, every glance, every noise made me feel like I was being watched. "You've got to trust me on this," Jasper muttered, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. "Vivian's not just about control. She's into something deeper. Something bigger than just the family." "Bigger?" I repeated, disbelief in my voice. "You're talking about criminal ties, Jasper?" His eyes flicked to me, cold and calculating. "I'm talking about an empire built on blood and money. You're a threat now, Alex. And Vivian will stop at nothing to take you down." I wasn't sure if I was scared of what he was saying or if I was scared of the way he looked, like a man who had already made his peace with whatever dark deal was happening behind closed doors. "Who's helping her?" I demanded, leaning forward. "Who's really pulling the strings?" Jasper didn't answer immediately. Instead, he flicked a glance at the rearview mirror again, then shook his head. "I can't tell you that. Not yet." I turned away from him, my mind racing. This was bigger than I thought. Vivian wasn't just trying to take the company, the money, the will, she was orchestrating something far more dangerous. And I was standing in the middle of it. "Look, I don't trust you," I said, the words colder than I intended. "You've been with her this whole time. Why the hell should I listen to you now?" Jasper's lips twisted into a grimace. "Because she's using you, Alex. She's been feeding you lies, manipulating you from the start. Every move you've made, every step you've taken, it's all been part of her plan. And you're not the only one she's targeting." I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But the pieces were starting to fit together, each new revelation adding weight to the crushing pressure on my chest. Jasper slammed the car into a sharp turn, tires screeching. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty street ahead, but something didn't feel right. I could feel it, like we were being led into a trap. "What are we doing?" I asked, my voice rising in panic. "Where are we going?" Jasper didn't answer right away, his grip tightening on the wheel. "You need to see something. Something that'll make you understand just how far Vivian's willing to go." A cold pit settled in my stomach. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know. But I had no choice. Not anymore. We pulled into a dark parking garage, the headlights flashing across concrete pillars. Jasper killed the engine, and we sat in silence for a moment. The tension between us was unbearable, but I couldn't look away from him. I had to know what he was hiding. "Stay close," he muttered, his voice tight. "You're gonna want to see this." I followed him as he walked to the far side of the garage, toward a dimly lit corner. The air was thick with the smell of oil and dust, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the concrete. I felt like I was walking into the belly of the beast, and every instinct told me to turn around and run. But I couldn't. Not yet. We stopped in front of a steel door, locked with a simple padlock. Jasper turned to me, his face hard, eyes narrowed. "You ready?" "No," I said flatly, but I followed him anyway. He unlocked the door, the sound of the bolt sliding echoing in the silence. Inside was a small room, the walls bare except for a few boxes stacked in the corner. It looked like an abandoned storage space, but the cold steel table in the center of the room caught my attention. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jasper didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to the table and opened a drawer. My heart pounded in my chest as he pulled out a thick file, its edges worn and yellowed with age. "This," he said, his voice low and deliberate, "is where it all comes together. Vivian's real plan." He tossed the file onto the table in front of me. I could see the name on the front. My father's name. The file was thick, full of documents I didn't want to see. I reached for it, my hands trembling. I opened it, flipping through the pages quickly, but my eyes froze on a single document, a contract, stamped with my father's signature. It wasn't just a will. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was a deal. My father had sold the company to an anonymous buyer, one with deep ties to Vivian. She had controlled everything from the start. The company, the estate, even the life I thought I had built for myself. I looked up, my breath caught in my throat. She's been setting me up this whole time. Jasper didn't reply. Instead, he turned away, his gaze distant. You're not the first, Alex. You're just the next. The weight of his words hit me like a freight train. I wanted to scream, to punch something, anything. But there was no way out of this. Vivian had already won. Or so I thought. A noise from the far side of the room snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned just in time to see the door swing open, and a dark figure stepped inside. My heart dropped. Nice to see you again, Alex, said the voice, cold and familiar. It was Robert Prescott. And he wasn't here to talk. You're not the first, Alex. You're just the next. The door swung open with a creak, and I froze. Standing in the doorway, arms crossed, was Robert Prescott. The last time I saw him, his smile had been polished, his military uniform pristine. Now, his expression was cold, unreadable, like a man who had already made up his mind about everything. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his eyes scanning the small storage room where we stood. The weight of his gaze was heavier than any physical presence. There was something predatory about him now, something that hadn't been there before. You shouldn't be here, Alex, he said, his voice low but sharp. It cut through the air, the tension palpable. I stood still, not giving an inch. Funny, I was just about to say the same thing to you. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. You've really made a mess of things, haven't you? You think you can take everything back? The company, the money, your father's legacy? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I'm not interested in your legacy, Robert. I want the truth. You're all tangled up in this web Vivian's been weaving. But it's all coming undone now. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You're naive. Do you really think Vivian's been doing all this on her own? No. She's just the face of it. She's been working with people much more dangerous than you could ever imagine. People who don't play by the rules. A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to show it. And you're one of those people, aren't you? His smile faltered for a moment, just long enough for me to notice. It's not that simple. But yes, I've made my choices. Choices that you clearly don't understand. He took a step forward, and I felt my back press against the cold, concrete wall. There was a sharpness to his movements now, as though he was trying to hold back something darker. You're out of your depth, Alex. You don't know what you're dealing with. Vivian's plan, he paused, letting the words sink in. You have no idea how far she's willing to go. I took a step forward, my fists clenched. Then tell me. Help me understand. You're not here just to gloat, Robert. You've always wanted something. For a split second, his eyes flickered with something else, regret, maybe? But it was gone before I could grasp it. You think I'm here because I want something from you? He laughed bitterly. I'm here because I'm trying to stop you from making a fatal mistake. You think you can expose Vivian? You think the truth will save you? It won't. It'll destroy you. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. The air between us felt thick with everything unsaid, every thread hanging in the balance. Robert wasn't the only one who had a hand in this. There were others, shadowy figures behind the scenes, pulling the strings. I took a step back, my mind racing. What are you going to do, Robert? Kill me? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence drag on, as if savoring the tension. When he finally spoke, it was with a calm certainty that sent a wave of dread through me. I don't need to kill you, Alex. I just need you to disappear. His words hung in the air, but I wasn't about to let him control the narrative. If you think Vivian's going to win this, you're as blind as she is. Robert took another step forward, his eyes never leaving mine. Vivian already won, Alex. You're the one who's late to the game. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. All these years, I thought I had a chance. I thought I could fight. But Vivian had already set the pieces in motion. I was just another casualty in her war. The air in the room shifted. A sharp noise broke the tension. A door slammed. I turned instinctively, my eyes catching movement in the dim light. A figure stepped out from the shadows, his face half hidden in the darkness. The man's presence was undeniable. I didn't need to see him clearly to know who he was. It was Jasper Bellinger. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, watching, as if waiting for something to happen. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice colder than ever. "What's he doing here?" Jasper's voice was low, almost mocking. "That's what I'm trying to figure out, Robert. What exactly are you going to do now?" Robert didn't respond. Instead, he clenched his jaw, eyes narrowing. There was no longer any pretense between us. Jasper and Robert were both playing games, dangerous games, and I was the one stuck in the middle. "Get out," Robert snapped, turning toward the door. "Before this gets any worse." I didn't move. Neither did Jasper. The silence hung in the air, the weight of our unspoken words pressing down on all of us. And then, out of nowhere, it happened. The lights went out. The room plunged into darkness, the only sound the deafening silence that followed. I heard the scuff of shoes on concrete, a faint shuffle. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone in my pocket. The screen flashed for a moment before the emergency lights flickered on, casting a dim, eerie glow over the room. Robert was gone. Jasper was gone too. I stood alone, in the dark, my chest tight with fear. It wasn't just the darkness that scared me, it was the realization that I had just been played again. Vivian, Robert, Jasper, they were all part of this twisted game. And I was just a pawn. I had no choice now. I had to find the truth. Before it found me first. Vivian already won. You're the one who's late to the game. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive. The final moment had arrived. I had nothing left to lose. The game Vivian had played so long, this cruel, dangerous game, was nearing its end. I knew I couldn't walk away from it anymore. Every decision, every twist, had led me here, and the stakes had never been higher. I stood outside the grand doors of the law firm, the one Vivian had turned into her fortress, her final battleground. This was the place where my father's legacy had been buried, where I had been erased from the story, and where Vivian's empire had been built. But it was all coming undone. I wasn't going to let her control everything, not anymore. "You're not ready for this," Jasper had warned me, his voice filled with a mixture of fear and regret when I told him what I was planning. "Vivian's not someone you can just expose. She has people in high places. She has power." "Maybe she does," I'd replied, my voice steady, "but power isn't everything. At the end of the day, it's about what's right. And what she's doing isn't right." I stepped through the doors and into the cold marble lobby, where the faint scent of expensive perfume clung to the air. The world outside was noisy, chaotic, but in here, everything felt suffocatingly calm, controlled. But beneath that calm was a storm, and I was about to make it rain. Vivian wasn't just playing with family ties anymore. She was playing with people's lives. I had seen the deal she made with Robert Prescott, seen how they'd worked together to erase me from everything that mattered. The documents in the file Jasper had given me were the last piece of the puzzle. The truth was right in front of me now. I had the evidence. The weight of everything, her lies, her manipulation, her empire, rested in my hands. The elevator dinged, and the doors slid open. I was met by Nolan, Vivian's right-hand man. The last time I saw him, his expression had been a mix of cold indifference and thinly veiled menace. His eyes narrowed as he saw me step out. You shouldn't be here, he said, his voice low, controlled. But I could hear the edge of panic in it. You were right, I said, taking a step toward him, my voice steady. I shouldn't be here. But I am. And I'm not leaving until this is over. Nolan shifted, his hand subtly inching toward his jacket. He wasn't going to let me walk out of here without a fight, I could see that much. But I wasn't backing down now. You don't know what you're dealing with, Nolan said, his tone hardening. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I said, voice tight. And so do you. The weight of the moment pressed down on me as I pulled out the stack of documents Jasper had passed me. I didn't need to explain the details. Nolan's face told me everything. He knew exactly what I had. You're a fool, he spat. Vivian's already one step ahead of you. You'll never make it out of here alive. His words stung, but they didn't scare me. Fear was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Not after everything I'd learned. Not after everything I'd lost. The only thing that mattered now was justice. I'm not afraid of her anymore, I said, my voice sharp, cutting through the tension in the room. And I'm not afraid of you. Nolan took a step forward, his hand still resting on the side of his jacket. It was clear he was about to make his move. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Suddenly, there was a loud crash as the door to the conference room swung open. I didn't have time to react. Vivian stood in the doorway, her figure framed by the dim light of the hallway behind her. Her expression was one of calm confidence, but I saw the flicker of something else behind her eyes, something that was slipping away. Alex, she said, her voice sweet, almost mocking. I'm surprised you made it this far. But it's over now. I glanced at the documents in my hand and then at her. It's never over until it's over. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You think you've won, but you've only made things worse. You're out of your depth. You'll never get away with this. The law doesn't work like you think it does. This is my world. Her words stung. But the sting didn't last. The truth was clearer now than it had ever been. I had what I needed to bring her down. And nothing she said could change that. Your world, I repeated, my voice low but cutting. Maybe you've built an empire, Vivian. But it's built on lies. And empires built on lies always fall. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because I was right. Every twisted decision she'd made to get to this point, every betrayal, every manipulation, it all came crashing down with the truth. I turned back to Nolan, whose face was twisted in anger and desperation. Take it to the authorities, I said, handing him the documents. And let them handle the rest. I didn't wait for a response. As I turned toward the door, I could hear Vivian's voice behind me. You won't get away with this, Alex. But I was already walking away. I had already won. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. It felt good. Cleansing. The weight that had been pressing on me for so long had lifted, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. In the end, I realized something. Power, wealth, control, these things didn't matter. What mattered was standing up for what was right. What mattered was fighting for justice, even when the world told you you were too small to make a difference. Vivian thought she could control everything, but she forgot one thing. She forgot that people like me, people who don't back down, always come out on top. Because no matter how dark the world gets, the truth always finds its way to the light. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Empires built on lies always fall.